Why do that today? You don't normally do that.
But normally it's a fashion statement. It's kind of like Sharon says, you know, the girls have me wrapped around their finger, and I tell her, nonsense, I have a will of steel where they're concerned. I just want to do what they want to do. I could stop anytime I wanted to, you know. Well, hi, thanks for coming. Usually at this point, I kind of try and give people a little progress report of where I am on various projects, and then take questions and answers. It's going to be a little harder with the where I am because my writing schedule's been a crater for the last 3 or 4 months. Some of you may be aware that in February, Sharon had yet another spinal surgery, and she got 2 weeks notice, a little less than 2 weeks notice for this one. And she's had a lot more trouble coming back from it. Her asthma's kicked up and it's caused some other issues. Then there have been a couple of problems with collaborative schedules. So good stuff has happened though. The last book that I actually delivered was probably, what was it? Well, let's see. Don't remember. Oh my God, I don't remember which was the last one I delivered. It's like people ask me, how many books do you have? I say, I don't know.
Quote real quotes.
Look at my bibliography on the one. Ad call Bain. I don't know. I know. People say, what's your favorite book? And I say, what day of the week is it? Because it's like trying to ask you, who's your favorite kid? Okay, and right after Mikey jumps into the van while it's moving, he's not your favorite kid. But he probably will be, 30 minutes later when you get over calling him out of the van. The reason I chose that particular is it actually happened this past, about Wednesday, I think. The girls and I were already in the van, and I'm like, where's Mikey? And they said, he didn't pack his lunch yet. I said, he didn't. Oh, he's packing it now. I said, well, he better. So I decided to go ahead and back out from under the carport, with the van so we'd be ready to go. And I back and all of a sudden, thump, bang, oh, step on the brakes, Mikey has jumped in through the open door of the van while I was backing out. Did you just jump into the van? He says, yeah. Get out! I'm out of the car, I'm standing there, again, I understand Mikey's about that much shorter than I am still. And I'm like, what did you think you were doing? He's like, what? I said, I never spank kids when I'm angry, that's the only reason I'm not wailing the crap out of you right now. he's like, oh, So I getting back in the van, and I'm like, don't you ever do that again. By the time I got to the bottom of the driveway, I'm to the point where my pulse has slowed down almost to normal. I'm saying, you could have got hurt bad. By the time I get to the school, to the point where I pull up in the parking lot and park instead of letting him out in the car line. And he's like, oh God, he is going to beat me. And I got him out, and he's staring at the ground. And I said, you really made me mad. Put my finger under his chin, pull his head up, and I say, the reason you made me mad is because you scared me to death. And I said, how do you think I would have felt if I had been backing up the car and I had run over you? And he doesn't say anything. So there was a minute there when I was so mad at you, I might have thought it was a good idea. And I said, but I think it would have been a really bad idea, so don't ever do that again. He said, okay. I sent him off to school. But my kids tell me that, my voice changes when they get upset with him. Now, of course, I have such an equable and even-keeled temperament that they must be mistaken. Yeah, that was sort of almost an allegory for how my life's been doing here for the last year or 6 months, it's been just sort of one disaster after another, intermixed with really good things, if you know what I'm saying, including the trip to Los Angeles in July for our second conference in Culver City with Evergreen. And I wish you guys could see their studio and all the neat stuff they've got. One thing that I don't think they mentioned to you is when they say they are cutting edge in graphics, cinematic technology, if they're doing anything, they're understating the case. Remember they were talking about the prototyper that they were showing you some of them? There are only 3 people in the world who have that technology. George Lucas, James Cameron, and Evergreen. And Evergreen's is about 3 years newer than anybody else's, and much better. You really weren't getting the full benefit of it in what you were seeing here. And I don't think that they got you told that when they get done running a scene through the prototyper, they have all of the camera angles for any shot they need, and they have all of the lighting values. And that is going to save them about 60% of the production costs of a traditional movie. Which means that if they spend $10 million making the movie, they're actually planning on spending a substantially larger number than that. But if they spend $10 million on it, it would be the equivalent of $16 million production budget. So that's going to have some really interesting consequences for the quality of the final product. There are people over there. Hi. Let's see. Okay, where am I on the writing schedule? Tim Zahn and Tom Pope and I have just handed in the first volume of the Travis Long trilogy, which is, the title had to change. It's now called, I think, A Call to Hope. No, it's called The Order. And the second volume is going to be A Call to Arms, and the third volume is going to be called A Call to Hope. That's the game plan right now. Yes?
What's Tom doing on that? What's the scope of Tom's participation?
The scope of Tom's participation? Fairly enormous. Tom is, okay. Every rough draft section that Tim did went to Tom before it came to me. In which, and in that process, Tom then went through, and in addition to offering some really deep critiques of the characters and so forth and what they were doing, Tom was the custodian of the technology in the book, even more than I am really for this period, because I told Tom that I had developed all of the niches into which the technology in Honor's time fitted. And just as I wanted Tim's voice in this book, I wanted somebody who might compartmentalize the technology differently from the way that I did, but who understood it as well or better than I did. And so there were some really interesting tactical menus that came out of this that I probably would have done differently, but I really, really liked the way that they wound up doing them. And it's totally consistent with the technology that you see later in the books. I'm really, really pleased with it. And so was Toni Weisskopf, when she was saying that she was really happy with the book, was not exaggerating her reaction to us one bit. I think it's going to be really, really good. I'm hoping that people will come and find it, because Tim is I have always loved Tim's writing. And yet he has never, I think, had the, I don't think that Tim has been given the credit he deserves for his writing in some respects, because a lot of people, well, you know, he did the Star Wars books, he's done this. He's done quite a few, you know, Hollywood adaptations and so forth. And one of the reasons he did them is that he does them so well. And another reason he did them is he put in his well, pays for college. I'm just happy to have him playing in my sandbox on this. But anyway, that's handed in. Eric and I are actually supposed to get some conference time in on Cauldron of Ghosts while we're here. I am working on the third multiverse book in the Hell's Gate series. I refer to them as the multiverse series. Everybody else seems to refer to them as the Hellgate books. I'm like, well, that's not really the name. It's kind of like I refer to it as the Mutineer's Moon series, and everybody else refers to it as the Dahawk series. I'm like, okay, who the hell do I know? I am about 84,000 words into my portion of that book. And then Joelle, who I'm sure many of you have met here at the con, Joelle Presby, is my collaborator on that now. And when I get my chunk done, then she will begin her chunk. We don't have a definite turn-in time for it. I would suspect that it will probably be turned in sometime second half of 2014. And then, of course, it'll have to be, you know, through production and schedule. And it's being a real bear in a lot of ways because I've been away from it for 8 years. And Joelle has never written in that universe to begin with, and it's her first novel. And she's got, oh my God, I'm gonna screw it up and you're gonna kill me. And I'm like, nah, you got to be friends in high places. And you know, there's an element of her learning and my mentoring in this, obviously, because she's never done a novel before. But the biggest problem is that I've been away from it that long, and I have two totally separate civilizations living on identical planets. And they all have their own place names for every spot on the face of the damn planet. And I'm going through doing searches for things like Key West in the two existing books to make sure that somewhere in there I didn't say, yeah, this is, you know, about where Key West would be. We should shortly have electronic maps of both planets, at least in general terms. Politically, yes, I'm sure we'll have that nailed down where the boundaries are and so forth. Whether or not we'll be able to get all of the place names properly inserted as we come to them, I don't know. But the new glossary entries, which have the new geographic names in them, are going. But anyway, I will be pulling off of that probably sometime in the next week or so in order to do my part of Cauldron of Ghosts, which is supposed to be delivered by the end of November. Given its currently scheduled release date, it damn well better be delivered by the end of, September. But I think Bane will probably make its release schedule on that one. Technically, is Eric in the room? Okay. I was actually supposed to have the manuscript in April, which was actually a delay from its original delivery date because of Eric's writing schedule. And I don't quite have all of it yet. but that's one of the reasons that Eric and I will be having a conference this afternoon after the con. Anyway, that's supposed to be done by the end of November. And then I have to jump into the next Safe Hope book, which has not been begun yet, and which I need to deliver to make the year difference, because we already had, you know, like, what, 4 months, 6 months slippage on the last one. In order to make it on the one-a-year schedule, I absolutely have to have it in no later than the end of March. And these are big books, so they take a little while to write. Then when I get done with that, I probably am not going to do an Honor Harrington next year. Because you're going to have Cauldron of Ghosts, okay, coming from me and Eric, that's going to be released in there. And you're going to have a call to order. So there will be 2 Honorverse novels next year, whether I write one or not. The other reason that I probably am not, or at least I'm not going to do it real quick like a bunny, is that Tony has agreed that I can begin my fantasy magnum opus, which springboards off the Basel books. And I hope to have the first volume of that done by, let's see, July-ish of next year. And then I would squeeze something into the period between July and November. And then in November I would begin the next tour book. So that's kind of where we are. And of course I have absolutely no cons at all on the schedule to distract me. No, none. Gina has promised me that there are none there, so they will each come as a fresh surprise to me, rather than my looking for the craters in my writing schedule. And assuming that Evergreen meets its projected schedule, probably I'm going to be spending substantially more time with them next year, because in order to make the 2016 release date that they want to make, they would really have to greenlight the project by October of next year. And at this point, where we are with Evergreen, by the way, because I'm sure this may be a question that comes up, is they are about as fully committed to doing this project as it is possible for someone to be. However, as with many things in life, it is contingent upon at least some factors which are beyond their immediate control. The big one at this point is that they have to be able to get a distribution deal that will guarantee them the number of screens that their model requires for financing this and putting it all together. And part of how well that's going to work is dependent on the Walking with Dinosaurs feature that they're releasing next month, because that will probably color their relationship with 20th Century Fox, which is the most probable distributor for the Honor Harrington movie. Yeah.
As someone who's followed a little bit of what that means, how many screens do they want to shoot?
They've given me a number, but I don't remember what it is. It is somewhat above middle of the road. Okay, I don't have an actual number. They are confident that they will be able to get that deal, but that's one reason why they want the outreach to beyond the immediate fan base, so that they have some at least anecdotal numbers and whatnot that they can bring to the table in their discussions with the distributor. A graphic novel is going to have an almost imperceptible blip in terms of the numbers that a distributor is going to be looking at. But if it increases the buzz about the property, we're not talking so much about total numbers as perceived awareness of it. That's really what they're looking for with the game and the graphic novel and so forth at this point. As I say, they're confident. And while Mike is relatively new to this business, I think you saw with the team that they had assembled here, they've got some folks who've been around the block a time or two and been involved in some fairly significant pictures, especially Scott. If you haven't, you might Google Mike Devlin, because you will find out some really interesting things about what this guy has already done in his life. He's not exactly the sort of person who, let's put it this way, he said, you know, the story is to make, the best way to make $1 billion in Hollywood is to have $1 billion. He's got most of the billion, okay? I mean, seriously. I am about as confident as anyone can be about this project going before the moment that the contract is actually inked to begin production, okay? So there's always the caveat that this is, after all, Hollywood and things may not work out. But that is less of a factor in this issue in some ways because of the nature of how Evergreen is organized. When Scott talked to you guys about like the standard portfolio, we was talking about the standard portfolio model for Hollywood. The way that it normally works is that a studio will have a portfolio of movie projects that it's working on at any given moment. And they will sort of be in a Darwinian process. Let's say you have 30 projects, and for 6 of them, you're planning $150 million production budgets. And for 14 of them, you're planning $20 million production budgets, and the rest you get $10 million production budgets. Okay, basically what you're hoping is that at least one of the big guys will actually hit big and do more than earn back just its production costs. You're hoping that somebody from the middle tier will show a profit, and that you may have a sleeper in the lower tier that won't go straight to video. And all of your various projects are competing for resources within the studio, for promotion budget, and the whole 9 yards. Well, Evergreen is a lot closer to the Pixar model, where you have one property, or maybe 2, and so all your eggs are in 1 or 2 baskets, and it could be disastrous if they don't at least break even. But all of your resources are devoted to only 1 or 2 projects. So you are going to make the very best picture you can make. And you are going to promote this picture the very best way you can promote it. And you don't have to worry about somebody saying, well, we think picture A is going to do better than picture B, so we're going to have to pull funding from picture B's promotion budget to pump A. Okay? And it also means that once they commit to a project, to the extent they're already committed to the Honorverse, they can't say, well, that one didn't work out, we'll go with so-and-so instead. Okay? So that's why I say that barring some really, really unexpected glitch in the distribution deal, this is going to go. And you guys are important to them as an interface. They talked about the fanthology. I refer to it as a phanoscopy myself. The only real drawback with what they've done is so much of it is based on electronic listening to what's out there. And the books have been around long enough that a lot of the really early discussion of the books was on sites that are no longer available. And so they're getting commentary from a lot of established fans who have been with the series all along. And their commentary is on the series where it is now, rather than where it was when they first met it and how they initially reacted to it. Now they do have new guys coming on, but the new guys are always like, yeah, well, I resisted reading David Weber for forever because he's a military fanatic nut, you know, kind of thing. That's what I was told. I finally broke down and read the book. And you know what, it was pretty darn good. And that's kind of like kissing your cousin at the family reunion. I mean, you know, in some ways. But that's not the only criticism that I would make of the methodology involved in putting this together. And it's not a criticism of the people employing the methodology, it's just an observation on the limitations of the methodology. Having said that, they did a pretty good job of analyzing you guys, to be honest, in how they characterized you. Mike gave you some of it, smart, well-informed, highly devoted, literate. Then there was socially inarticulate. I don't think he mentioned that part. And the observation that what they need to do is to give you guys more tools to reach out to people beyond the immediate fan base, to introduce people who don't know Honor Harrington to them, so that we get enough grandmothers and their kids coming to the movies to fill the seats we need to fill. And that's one reason for the graphic novel. It is absolutely true. I told them, I don't know how they are going to open the movie, but I still have hopes they'll do it the way that I suggested to them, and they all said, ooh, that sounds good. Originally, we were going to do Basilisk Station. There are some problems to doing Basilisk Station as a movie. One of them is that so much of it takes place inside the heads of the various people involved. Another one is that I was building the universe for the very first time in it, so there's a lot of the word count that's devoted to telling you what the Star Kingdom is and what the People's Republic of Haven is, etc.
Go ahead and call it.
Beg your pardon?
You can go ahead and call it an info dump.
It is not an info dump. But it does, it is much more one-sided in many ways than the later books, because you're seeing everything pretty much from Honor's perspective, or at least Manticore's. So I said, well, you know, I'd love to see you begin with Basilisk Station, but I'm not sure how well it ends up. So they tried a screenplay, didn't work. That screenwriter is no longer with us. And then they said, well, we've decided that what we're going to have to do is kind of a fusion. I said, okay. And they said, so we thought we would combine Ms. Midshipwoman Harrington, Let's Dance, on Basilisk Station in honor of the Queen. Or at least elements of each of them. I said, how long is this movie? And I said, guys, yeah, it's not going to work. And I said, it's not going to work for a lot of reasons, but the biggest one is that there's a 40-year plus stretch between Ms. Midshipwoman Harrington and Basilisk Station. She's 40, you know, by the time. And I said, I think we should just go ahead and just start with Honor of the Queen. And they thought about it, and they said, yeah, you know, what does he know? You may have a point. And I said, here's what I want to do. I don't know this is going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, I don't want you to go to the movie and say, oh, I should have done it the way Dave wanted to do it. You know, it's cool, you know. But my idea is that they start with a completely blank screen, black screen, total silence. Haven't run into the credits yet. We got through the trailers for everything. You know, it's kind of like, you might as well be 20 minutes late to the movie, because even if they start the trailers on time, you'll still, you know, catch the opening credits. But anyway, so they establish this total silence, darkness, and then you jump straight with absolutely zero warning into the middle of the final battle against the Q ship, the Basilisk station. The power room blows up. All this is really compressed. The power room blows up. Honor as Mr. McKeon get below, take over damage control. You get a flash of Harkness hauling a missile down the corridor. You know, the Q ship closes in for the kill, and Honor blows it away. Big explosion. And then Honor sits up in bed. As she gets up, and she walks into the head past a chair that has her dress uniform laid out on it. And she splashes some water on her face and kind of looks at herself in the mirror. And then she starts climbing into her uniform. You roll the opening credits over that. You get to the end of the credits, and by golly, it just happens to be that she's got her uniform on, you know. And then she goes out of her sleeping cabin down the little hall, and there she is in the wardroom for the meeting, the party with Courvoisier, where she gets orders to go to Grayson. And you've got like, okay, you've established that when you see these people again, they've been to hell and back with her once before. You've established that you really don't want to piss this lady off, you know. And you've done all of it before you're past the opening credits, and then you can go on with the movie. And so I said, ooh, shiny. And hopefully that's somewhere close to what we're going to do, but I haven't seen the new screenplay they're working on, so I don't know that for sure. Now there's also the problem that they need to establish Nimitz and who he is in a way. They can't do it the way I did it in the books, where I spend the first book telling you, well, he's a lot more than just a pet. But what you're really thinking, oh, he's so cute. I wish I had one. And then, of course, you get in honor of the Queen, and you're like, ooh, sharp. And by the time you're into the third or the fourth book, you're beginning to really realize that he is his own person, that he is independent of Honor. Probably isn't exactly the right word because of the nature of their bond, but she's not independent of him because of the nature of the bond. That he is at least as much an independent, autonomous, intelligent being as she is, okay? And by the time you're into Honor Among Enemies, okay, you realize, oh, I'm sorry, by the time you get into, oh boy.
In Enemy Hands?
In Enemy Hands, yes, thank you. I knew it had enemy in the title somewhere anyway. It's Sunday. But by the time you get to there, you actually have the sequence in which I just go right ahead and tell you that she has the same relationship with him that you would have with a lover, except that there's no physicality involved in it. I mean, she is to him and he is to her the most important being in the universe, if you see what I'm saying. But they need to establish that sooner. And one reason that they wanted to have him, they were going to try to make him bigger a little, and I was like, you know. And they don't want him to spend as much time riding around on her shoulder. There are two reasons for this. One of them is Nimitz is going to be the most expensive single item in this entire movie by far. Every bit of him is going to be CGI. They have to figure out how to make six-limbed locomotion work. They have to figure out how to make the centaur part of him work. And they have to do this in a way that will let him be ripping out throats with gory abandon at the dinner party.
And having us cheer for that.
Yeah. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And I don't know that Nimitz is going to wind up looking like we have all envisioned Tree Cats looking by the time we're done. Most of the drawings and so forth that I've seen so far, the concept art they've been working for, has no fur on him at all, because they want to figure out the musculature, and they can always stick the fur on later, given the fact that he's CGI. But the other reason that they don't want him riding around on her shoulder all the time is because they want to establish the separation between them, rather than having him appear to be an appendage of Honor. Okay, and so they said we need to establish you. And I said, okay, let's go back to my opening scene. They said, okay, what about it? I said, so you have the big explosion, and Honor sits up in bed. And when she sits up in bed, Nimitz hops up onto the bed with her and reaches out and puts like one hand on her cheek and looks into her eyes. And she says, sorry about that. And he kind of, turned. She says, well, I really hated to drag you into that. He goes, and she goes, but they're getting better. And he goes, and she says, okay, well, at least they're getting less calm, less freak. He kind of goes, okay, yeah. And so what you've established here, just before she goes in and starts splashing water or anything else, you've established that there is some link between them that is causing her dreams to be a problem for him. And he has responded with body language and expression to the questions that she's asked in a way that makes it clear that he's actually understanding what she's saying and responding to it. So in that same little economical sequence, you've established at least the memory of Basilisk Station, and you have nailed her relationship with Nimitz. You've got 60% of it nailed right there. Later on, you'll see more of her relationship. Yes? Don't know. That might be. Well, there are going to be some significant departures and fusions in making the movie. Some characters may disappear entirely. For example, and this is by no means certain, but one of the things I've been thinking about is ways in which characters can be combined to still carry the storyline the way it needs to be carried. What's going to happen is when you write a script, this is really cool because it's a whole different concept from the way you write a novel. When you write a screenplay, one of the things that you do is you figure how many minutes you've got, and you figure how many of those minutes character A needs to be on camera, given the weight of that character's role in the movie. So let's say you decide Honor needs to be on camera 60% of the time. And then you figure, okay, let's see, McKeon needs to be on camera, given his role as 10 minutes of time. Nimitz needs to be on camera 50 minutes of time. And you pretty soon find out that you have about, with the characters you've got about 18 times as many minutes that they have to be on screen as you have minutes to work with. So then you start looking for scenes where you can combine their camera time. Honor needs to be on camera 60% of the time, Nimitz needs to be on camera 50% of the time. Well, if he's on camera with Honor all but 10% of her time, we're covered. And you kind of parse out your time budget that way. And then you have to do all of this based on the story that you want the screenplay to present. So first you have to decide the story, and then you decide the minutes, and the first thing you do when you've done all that, you start talking to the production people and say, we have too many actors, we can't pay them all. You're gonna have to find, people you can combine. Besides, when you do that, you'll be able to combine their minutes too, right? I mean, kind of thing, so that. So, for example, Bernard Yanikov. All right, I love that character. But we could combine him with Wesley Matthews and let Matthews be the one who has the conversation with Courvoisier. And then, instead of passing the message, tell my wives I love them, from HonorCon, which I think is one of the real moments in the book, and I would hate to lose, we have Courvoisier telling Matthews, get the hell out of here, you can't do anything. He's not killed in the initial hit on Madrigal. You know, you can't do anything. And Matthews has established a bond with this man and saying, you know, we can only stay and die with you. And he's saying, what will that accomplish? Okay, kind of thing. And go that way with it. The equally powerful scene will carry a lot of the same freight, but it lets us remove one character from the menu of characters we have to tell the story. And there are other things that can happen. I'm not going to tell you at least one that we've been thinking about, because it would be both really cool in some ways, and you guys would be really upset in other ways, but it would be good. But that's one of the things that I'm thinking about, because I'm thinking that the more of that I can come up with, the less likely they are to do something that the existing fans will be like, whoa, why did they do that? Also, they are, not only do they want my input from an artistic perspective, if you will, they are seeing this in terms of I am identified with the fan base for the Honor books a lot more intensely than some authors are identified with the fan base for their books. And so Evergreen, to be perfectly honest, wants to leverage that and use me as their spokesperson for as much as possible in talking to you guys. And for that to work, I have to be involved, and I have to be comfortable with, or at least understand why they're doing what they're doing, so that I can explain it to you guys in terms that will work for you, especially if it's going to be something painful, and I don't really have anything yet that falls into that category, but that will be necessary to make it work as a movie and be a problem for people who love it as a book. How many of you have seen the, I think it's the Stuart Granger version of Prisoner of Zenda, the Technicolor version? Okay, how many have seen the black and white? How many have noticed that they used exactly the same script and exactly the same camera angles in both movies? In fact, the Technicolor was simply an effort to upgrade the technology from the black and white. Now, how many have read the book? No, you did, Kent. Then you will have observed that in the movie the characters are all who the characters are in the book, and that in fact much of the dialogue in the movie is taken directly from the book. Well, what you may not realize is that not only was the Technicolor done as a faithful reproduction of the black and white, but the black and white was adapted directly from the stage play of Prisoner of Zenda, and the co-author of the stage play of Prisoner of Zenda was Philip Oppenheim, the guy who wrote The Prisoner of Zenda. And in addition, Prisoner of Zenda is only like 80,000 words long. So you can have a much better balance between page count and minutes available with a film that long. The only other film I can remember that was as faithfully adapted from the book was the Princess Bride, which was written by a screenwriter in the first place. So I was like, I wonder why that one moved to the screen so well, you know. So whatever we do, there are going to be problems, but I think that it is going to, I see we don't have the advantage that Orson Scott Card has in that we haven't turned the short story into a novella, into a novel, into a movie, and had all that practice in just reinventing it. it's going to be worth it. Now, I have now nandered for quite some. Is this an hour or an hour and a half? Hour? Oh my God! And it started at 10:30. Oh, okay. Well, that's good because we have 15 minutes left on that basis. Okay, yes.
The question that came up at the end of the justice system panel.
Yeah.
Which ships have JAG officers and which have officers who simply have JAG assignments? By class, I would assume.
That actually is an interesting question. I would assume that probably, let me think, I would really have to go back and give that some thought because it's not an issue that arises very often.
But
Any ship okay, if you remember, Wanderer did not have a JAG officer on board when Honor was dealing with the mutineers, or the intended mutineers in Honor Among Enemies, when she was confining them and they're going to be remanded for trial, etc. Most captains and XOs aboard in the Royal Antiquarian Navy are going to have at least some JAG, some legal training.
Right.
You're really a lot more, the model really is a lot more the British Sailing Navy than the current U.S. Navy in that respect, as in many. And the captain is expected to exercise the functions of a JAG officer. I mean, you notice in Honor Among Enemies, it's the XO who is reporting on the, I've investigated, I've done this, I've done that, I've done the other. Probably by the time you get up into heavy cruisers pre the automation phase where they had the large companies, you're probably getting up to having an actual JAG officer and the equivalent of an NCIS, agent at sea in the ship's complement. But I haven't really, to be honest, worked that out. So now, of course, the People's Navy, it really didn't matter because justice, we don't need no stinking justice.
That's what we're sure.
Yeah, it's like, of course. Okay, we are about to have the sentencing phase. Sir, we haven't had the trial yet. We don't need a trial. We're about to have the sentencing phase. Oh, that's right. This is the People's Navy. So, were you going to say something?
Yeah, for the U.S. Navy, most ships have legal officers, which is a collateral duty.
Yeah, yeah.
And actual JAG, actual NCIS are generally only on light ships.
Well, that kind of fits with the model that I've got kicking around back here. It's an interesting question, and it's not something that's actually come up in any of the novels that I've had to deal with. So I probably, yes.
Well, it gives the impression that antiquarian society is not quite as lawyer-ridden as modern time.
Oh, it's not.
Let's go elsewhere.
Yeah, Mark and I actually have discussed that. One of the things, the Manticore, Star King Manticore uses, among other things, the loser pays system for civil damages. So you better be pretty sure you got a case before you bring it. And you're not going to have too many people who say, well, I'll go ahead and take this case on a percentage basis, and we'll ask for $15 million and hope to get $150,000, so we'll go away.
Well, and then with the addition of dueling as a right for as a resolution, and comes under that.
Yeah, there will be a certain number of, you want to sue me? Fine. Okay, let's fight a duel instead.
The honor society is a polite society.
Yeah. But for example, you're not going to have in Manticore the kind of venue shopping that you'll see here. Let's bring the suit in Texas because they'll give us bigger damage awards or whatever. Does that kind of sort of?
Yeah. Part of it comes up because the ships travel outside of Manticore.
Yeah.
And they have to deal with other legal systems. Somebody's got to have some knowledge of, how the fines get paid.
No, they don't.
Even if they don't say it.
No, they don't. Not if they're the Royal Manticorian and say, what, you want us to pay funds? You must be joking. Why do you think they're so unpopular? That's obviously the reason they're so unpopular with the Solids. They don't have legal officers aboard who say, sir, you have to do that. You know,
in the ship that that ship didn't have a JAG officer, but the tactical officer went off rails. It was just the captain and the SAC.
Yeah, well, but see, that wouldn't necessarily be something for the JAG to deal with anyway. That would be we've decided to prefer charges against you, and you're going to the flagship to sit there and wait until we prefer charges. Instead, what the captain said is, you're a jackass, okay, and you are relieved of your duties, and if I see anything that even looks like retaliation, I am going to hand you your head. I would hand you your head for breakfast, but you won't be able to get it out of your anal orifice when it's time to eat. Okay, that would be, of course, sort of the conversation that they would have at that point.
What is really oriented, I hope so, at least.
I'm sorry.
The Vincent family, what the son from corporate what is really married, I hope so, at least. But what is with this system? Any chance we see Vincent in the Royal Navy or Royal Navy?
I'm sorry,
he's asking if there's any chance we'll see a member of the Winton family in the Royal Navy, because you've got one of the kids married, but the sister is not.
Don't know. Normally, Elizabeth would have served in the Navy, but because of the nature of where things were heading when she came along, especially as heir, she knew there was no way, but that's why her brother, Michael, served. I don't know. We are going to see a member of the Mayhew family, or at least she's there. Whether or not we're actually going to spend time with her is another matter. And you had one right here.
Yeah, since you're not reading from the Safehold series, I was just wondering about, you must get asked this a lot, but on you said you're planning about 9 books for the series. I was wondering if we're still on pace for that, or if you think you're probably going to have to go over that.
I'm thinking that I am probably going to wind up the current war within the next book or two. And then there will be a hiatus, but they kind of have this ticking clock over there. It's like year 897, year 898, year 899, you know, kind of thing. And by the way, I know exactly what's going to happen in year 1000, and I know what's under the temple.
Oh, you put it there.
Purple t-shirt.
You mentioned earlier that you're going to be writing this big fantasy thing.
Yes.
Are the previous characters in the Boston novels going to be in that, or is it going to be a whole new set of characters?
Most of the characters you've met will be in there, and I will warn you now that the body count will be very, very, very high before this series is over. And I will also tell you that when you read the last line of the last book, you will discover that at least 2 of the main characters of the magnum opus are not who you thought they were the whole way through. And that conversation that you thought you understood, actually, that you thought you understood that the readers didn't understand, you didn't understand either. So you have to go back and reread the entire series. Oh, that's what he was saying. Let me get somebody else. We already had.
How many books?
Oh, how many books? Projected, a total of 5. And I've got this one, I've got the entire series planned out. I don't have a begin point and an end point. I have this is what happens in book 2, this is what happens in book 3. So I probably will come closer to hitting my originally projected schedule. And I will take great pleasure in publishing the first book, which was the first novel I ever submitted, which was rejected by Valentine. And I'm not going to put an author's note in it. This book was rejected by Valentine 20 years ago. That would be small-minded. Instead of putting it in just every con I go to, I'm just going to tell people, but without committing it to writing, so no one can say, well, he was small-minded 20 years from now.
Just hand deliver them a signed copy.
Do what?
Hand deliver them a signed copy.
Oh, yeah. So, I don't know if you remember this manuscript when you rejected it in 1988. Some of you may have been there. Anyway, here it is. I hope you like it.
You said that the tech Bible you did for the Honorverse before you started writing Basilisk Station was around 85,000 words. How big was the Bible for Hazel and Starfire?
Well, for Basel, it was probably somewhere around 1.5 million words. Because Norfresso was originally created by me when I was in high school. Certain person sitting here with the mosaic beard in the 3rd row actually got killed in that universe more times than you could possibly count. And actually met an iteration of Basel who was not quite the upright and paladinish character that he has since become. He was not known as Basel Bloody Hand because he kept breaking his knuckles on people the way that he was. He did it another way in the original book. But that's how long Norfresso. Now, the novels have very little to do with the gaming adventures. This isn't one of those where I said, well, I'm going to take the good, fun gaming adventures on the dungeon crawl that I had and turn it into a novel. But the universe and the politics and the map and everything was worked out for it. And the general sweep of the history was worked out for it. So that's how. Yeah, that one's got a pretty extensive tech Bible on it, actually. Starfire's probably close to that amount because of all the game design work that I did in that universe. Wait a minute. We gotta let the foreigners ask at least one question. Oh yeah, okay. Other foreigners. Okay, yeah.
There were talks about doing the relevant issue of Honor next year, the anniversary edition. Is it still on or not?
I don't know. I think it is, but I am not sure. Of course, another point that is needing to be looked at here, going back for a moment to Evergreen, is that if the movie goes, then there are clearly going to be movie-related re-releases of the books and so forth, and probably, hopefully, a substantial surge in sales on them. If you go look at Amazon, for example, you'll see that Martin's Game of Thrones is always up there in the top sellers at any given moment. He has the advantage it's an ongoing TV production, which won't be the case here. But on the other hand, when Evergreen talks about spending 15, 20 years on this project, they're completely serious about what they want to do. They want this first movie to be a tentpole feature that kind of holds up an entire franchise of additional movies and books and games and the whole 9 yards. I don't think they have a TV series in mind now, but that doesn't mean that one would be impossible. And in fact, the problem is that if they do a TV series, then the movies will probably cut loose from the books, because the books would lend themselves so well to the episode development of, and what they want to do right now is to actually use the books for the movies, okay? So it might be that, what I'm thinking here is that if that happened, it might be because the movies have peaked and they're doing TV instead, if you see what I'm saying, which would have pluses and minuses from my perspective. So we'll have to see how it works out. Okay, well, we've been doing most of the questions. Yellow or white t-shirt with a big green thing on the front. Okay, the green thing on the front.
Over the years, you've written lots of books with thousands of named characters, and I have always wondered, how do you come up with the many, many names, and how do you keep track of them all?
I keep track of them all by writing them down. How do I come up with it? Well, I will try and come up with, let's say, an ethnicity for a planet, and then select names that fit that ethnicity. And sometimes I find myself actually violating the naming conventions of that culture because I didn't really fully understand them when I started. But I also like to do cross-cultural names. One of my favorite is from the Apocalypse Trial. I'm still very fond of Anwar O'Donnell as a cross, you know. But I also like Chinu van Ravenstein. I mean, you know. Yeah, it's I don't know. I hate to have scenes in which it's the lieutenant. Okay, all the way through. And one of the things that I have discovered is I deliberately tuck some characters away for later development. That, like Thomas Theismann. Okay, I don't think anybody at the end of Honor of the Queen would have seen Goodbye, Citizen Chairman coming. Okay, but I knew all along that he was going to play a critical role in restoring the Republic, and that's why he was studying history from Alfredo Yu's mentoring. Okay, but I've also found that characters who I did not originally plan to turn into major characters have surprised me by becoming that. And it's always handy in that case for the minor character in question to have a name when the time comes. And so I tend to, even the character, there are many characters in there who never are referred to anything except the sergeant or the lieutenant, who actually have a name in my character list. And it's like so-and-so, platoon sergeant, 3rd platoon, company A, 2nd battalion, 3rd regiment, 1st division, 4th corps, Imperial Tristian Army. And he's entered that way in the database when I invent him. And the database is, well, it's not really a database because it's not searchable. It's just a list of all the characters. Becomes the basis for like the cast of characters on the end of the Safe Help books. You will find, if you look really, really carefully, if you're the kind of person who reads phone books, you will find that there are some named characters in the list who never actually appeared in the book. Because they were there at the time, they're in my character list, and if I need to go back later on and say, well, you know, and introduce him to you, you will find out that he was in 3rd Platoon, Company A, you know, in the book past. Robert, then you have done Thomas. I'm running out of time. Let me hand it back that I haven't done.
Yes, are we allowed to ask about Prince Roger?
Yes.
Sure. What do you want to know? Tom, we actually have, it's no longer my fault. John would forever say, well, David hasn't given me the outline. Okay, we know exactly what's supposed to happen in the next book now, and I just need John to do the frickin' rough draft. So I can blame him now. So yeah, you can ask. I'll handle it.
Here you go.
Yeah.
When you talk about House of Lies, you mentioned that you'll probably include along with Hayden, like the Honorines and all that. Have you ever thought about just doing House of Lies as a Hayden standalone, and then doing a 3rd volume with all of the ancillary?
No. Well, right this minute we're looking at a total of 3 volumes. And the 3rd volume would be House of Shadows. And the fiction piece in it, the main focus on it would be the Solarian League, which is so damn big that it's going to take a major chunk all by itself. And whatever we decide to tell you at that point about the Mason alignment. So I don't think we're going to, the Anunnaki aren't big enough to carry a book by themselves, and they're too big to combine in a book with the Solarian, the Yan, and the Mason alignment. So the breakdown kind of makes itself. It's going to be, there's not going to be the degree of smooth fusion there was between Manticore and Grayson in the first one. Okay, I know we are technically over our time. Are you coming up here to take the microphone away from me?
Put your hand up.
That's good. You going to actually turn the light on?
Yeah.
Ah! See, I really am here. You just couldn't tell.
Put your hand up.
Okay, so I hand back here.
Yes, Chris, in the Safehold books, is it your plan to eventually cover the Second Gababa War, or will you be cutting it off before then, the way you cut off the...
Well, by the time I get to the Second Gababa War, I'll probably forget where I am, much less what I meant to write.
Hopefully I will. If I do not think I'm going to have time to cover the war properly, then the last of the Safehold books will have an afterword in it, which will be the fleet setting off to go beat the snot out of the Gababa.
So, sort of the way you had Luminous Moon Man with the Akatani?
Yeah, kind of. Well, the Akatani, there are actually at least 2 more books we need to write in that series. It is, however, currently at a point where it's been sleeping long enough that I can kind of say, walk very quietly past the gate to that particular cage. You know. There are also 2 more books I need to write in the Path of the Fury universe.
Yes.
Including young Ferhat bin Belkacem, fresh out of the Justice Academy, absolutely convinced that every I has to be dotted and every T procedure must be followed, and the mission which disabused him of that notion. And which ends up with him as like the equivalent of a Justice Department midshipman who has been carrying the credentials of a flag officer for quite some time and who has hired Simon Mankoto and his mercenaries to swap the problem. On the bridge, his entire team has been killed. That's how he wound up with the credentials of the leader of the team. And along the way, the only guy he's got for backup is this retired, not real bright, but very determined Justice Department sergeant that he's picked up somewhere along the way. All right, sir, we'll get her good, you know, kind of thing. And he's on the flag bridge of Mankoto's flagship, and it's time for him to admit that, well, I promised you the Emperor would pay you, but the Emperor really doesn't know I did it. And I'll do my best to be sure that you do get paid, but you may have to be patient for a decade or 2, you know, because I can't guarantee payment. At that point, the sergeant says, yeah, but I can. After all, I'm a full inspector at O Branch, and I've been just following you around, seeing how you do it. You were doing so good, I didn't even do anything, but hey, don't worry about it, I can see it. And that's how he gets recruited for O Branch. So I figured, you know, it would be fair to do that to him, given, you know, everything he later does to Elysium. Are you here to drag me away, or
Actually,
just?
You can take 2 more questions. How's that?
I can take 2 more questions. I don't think you've asked
Okay,
one.
a quick one here. Whatever happened to Fearless after the Honor of the Queen? It's supposed to be on the list, but we never see Fearless in action anywhere.
Well, the original Fearless, the Star Knight class, I'm sad to say, has gone to the breakers.
Right.
You may see another one. I deliberately didn't have another one running around with Honor, okay? And I've already given the new Nike is now running around with 10th Fleet with Mike. And it might be a little bit too much of a good thing. Oh, look, here are all of Honor's dead ships. Okay, good. And look, it's a new destroyer named Hawkwing. Anybody want to serve on board? You know, no, it's not named the Buckley. We have no ships in our Navy named the Buckley.
No,
It's a tradition that ships are commanded by anybody named Harrington get beat to snot, though. One of my favorite parts of Honor Among Enemies is, oh God, it's Harrington, we're all gonna die. Yeah, because you gotta wonder about, okay, the rest of the crew, hot damn, we're gonna get served under the salamander, you know, I'm looking forward to this. I guess my insurance is all paid up. Good. Okay, we got one in the back corner. Ah, okay, she has it, okay. I got one more. Bron, was that a raised hand back there? Oh, you were pointing, okay. Good.
You raised hand? Is you raising your hand?
The current technology of HonorCon is
I'm just wondering if he's going to add like a couple more
what
sentences
has
to
been
the
a tactical thing where the primary weapons on tactics were energy based. Does long, is that at the time when they actually developed those energy tactics?
Well, in Long's time, it's like, arty, sharpen them cutlasses, kind of thing. Almost. Missiles are huge. It's more like how many torpedoes do you have on board? And how rapidly can you reload the launchers from the limited number of reloads that you have? It's, I hate to say this, but it's kind of like, if you could think of a fleet of World War II U.S. Navy fleet submarines engaging in surface warfare against one another. You're getting kind of close to how this works. The sidewalls are very primitive. You actually, most of the combat is wedge face to wedge face, so that you can actually see the other guy and fire shots at him. And the ships aren't doing a whole bunch of rolling and so forth because they're not maneuverable enough yet. They still have spin sections to produce shipboard gravity and that sort of technology. So it really is a very different flavor. And it is not yet, the plateau that Honor is coming off of or that Roger is coming off of, actually has been established for maybe 120 years. It's not, I've said in the Tech Bible, it's the result of a long, slow progress that goes back 700 years. But the plateau isn't anywhere near that wide. It's about maybe 150 years, like I say. So, in essence, Travis is starting up one face of the plateau, and Roger is charging down the other side.
Yeah, well, Roger talks about, the primary dreadnoughts of their, is like 200 and some years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the weapons can't have changed all that much.
Well, they can have, remember that the ships that he's talking about are ships that have been refitted heavily over the intervening period, and also that they are the existing ships, whatever Janacek may have to say, are hugely out of date compared to, say, the Solarian League or the Republic of Haven. They're just, it's kind of like, it's 1940, okay? And you're Tibet, no, I have a coast, you're Thailand, all right? And you have 3 destroyers in your fleet, 2 of which date from like 1900. And the USS Washington, I'm sorry, the USS Colorado sails into port. Okay? You're going to be like, I really don't want to mess with her, kind of thing. But then on the other hand, if you are the Yamato, okay, you're like, look, it's the Colorado! And that's kind of where they are with the dreadnoughts and super dreadnoughts of Roger's time. Give the flagship, Kumalo's flagship for 10th Fleet, okay, is an obsolete, not just obsolescent, but obsolete super dreadnought. But nobody in Talbot Quadrant was going to screw around with her. All right. Well, the Royal Antiquarian Navy of Rogers' time, its capital fleet, is kind of in that same position as far as everybody Manticore but him seems to be concerned. Okay? We can bash all the ABOs in we need to. Nobody in the Silesian Confederacy is going to be able to give us a really hard time, and pay no attention to those Havenites in the corner. You know, they're not headed our way. We don't need to worry. This is why Roger initially is pushing for not the paradigm-changing technology that he later really starts reaching for big time. I'm talking about in his article in the Proceedings. In the Proceedings, he's just arguing for God's sake, let's build some ships that are first-line technology today that are big enough to actually contribute to the security of the home system. He understands that he needs to break the tactical model and impose a new one if he's going to have the capability in Manticore to stand up to something the size of the Republic of Haven. Is that? Yeah. So you could say that the super dreadnoughts that he's talking about, let's say they're 200 years old. Okay. I don't think they were quite that old, but let's say they're 200 years old. They're still 100 years younger than where Travis is. Okay, so you've got that whole period. We have a tendency, I know I do, as a naval historian, looking back at transitions in naval weaponry starting about 1850 to the future. Wow, you know, all that happened like that, but it really didn't. Okay. Yeah. And the guys who had to cope with the battle fleets in 1914 were dealing with technology that was like, well, it was all developed since 1905. Actually, it wasn't, but even if it had been, that was a third of their career for a flag officer. Okay? So, you know, we have this tendency to compress because we're looking back at how quickly these changes occurred. The changes came at breakneck speed, especially from the 1880s on. And a lot of people don't realize, don't think about the fact that the U.S. Navy had laid down, I think, 6 classes of dreadnoughts before it commissioned the first one. And because the ships were coming so close together, with the authorization every year, and it takes like 4 years at that point for the U.S. Navy to build a battleship. So by the time they started getting experience with by the time they launched the first of the dreadnoughts, they were only just getting ready to do Roosevelt's round-the-world cruise with the pre-dreadnoughts, much less, and yet they had to figure out what are we going to be building to commission in 1914 without the experience of evaluating the ships they built in 1908. Okay? And that's scary when you think about it. But I think now I got to go. I think not only is Anton looking at me, but people are pulling the door saying, he's still in there. So, thank you for coming.